My name is Ethel, and I am 61 years old. I built everything from nothing. My hands, my sweat, my tears. That $5 million house in Connecticut was proof that a girl from a small town in Ohio could make something of herself. After my husband Walter passed, I kept that house for one reason only. My daughter Brooke. She begged me not to sell it. She said it held her father's memories. But one October afternoon I came home early and heard words that shattered everything. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below. And if you have ever heard something you were never meant to hear, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what I am about to tell you changed my entire life. I grew up in a small town outside of Columbus, Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and nobody had much of anything. My father fixed pipes for a living. He would come home every night with grease under his fingernails and a tired smile on his face. My mother worked as a cashier at the local grocery store, standing on her feet for 8 hours a day just to help make ends meet. We were not poor in the way that makes headlines, but we were poor in the way that means you learn early that nothing comes free. I was the first person in my family to go to college. I worked 3 jobs to pay my way through, waitressing at a diner in the mornings, filing papers at a real estate office in the afternoons, cleaning houses on the weekends. I barely slept, but I never complained. I knew what I wanted, and I was willing to bleed for it. That is where I met Walter, at a real estate conference in Cleveland. He was tall, quiet, and had the same hungry look in his eyes that I saw in the mirror every morning. We started talking about property investments, and by the end of the night, we were planning our future together. Not just as husband and wife. As business partners, we bought our first house together 6 months after we got married, a falling-apart Victorian that everyone else had given up on. We spent every weekend for 2 years fixing it up ourselves. Walter learned plumbing from YouTube videos before YouTube even existed properly. I taught myself how to refinish hardwood floors. When we sold that house, we made a profit of $42,000. It felt like $1 million. Over the next 30 years, we built a real estate company with over 200 employees. We bought properties nobody else wanted and turned them into homes people dreamed about. Walter handled the numbers. I handled the people. Together, we were unstoppable. The house in Connecticut came 20 years into our journey. By then, we had made it. Really made it. The house was a 7-bedroom Victorian on 3 acres of land. It had an indoor pool, a library with floor-to-ceiling oak shelves, a sunroom that looked out over gardens I designed myself. The fireplace in the living room was made of Italian marble. Every detail was chosen by Walter and me together. But more than the marble and the oak and the acres that house was where we raised Brooke. It was where she took her first steps in the kitchen, where she had her 16th birthday party on the back lawn, where she got married under the oak tree Walter planted the year she was born. When Walter got sick, the house became something else. It became a sanctuary. He spent his last months in that sunroom watching the birds in the garden, holding my hand. When he died 8 years ago, I thought about selling. The house was too big for one person. The silence echoed in ways that made me ache. But Brooke cried when I mentioned it. She said the house was all she had left of her father. She said she could not bear to see strangers living in our memories, so I kept it. For her. The maintenance costs were nearly $60,000 a year, but I did not care. I would have paid anything to make my daughter happy. Brooke was always my pride and joy. She was smart, driven, beautiful. She graduated top of her class from Harvard Law School. She got a job at one of the biggest law firms in New York City. When she called to tell me, I cried for an hour. My daughter, the lawyer. The girl from a family of pipe fixers and cashiers arguing cases in Manhattan courtrooms. She met Spencer at a charity gala 5 years ago. He came from old money, the kind of money that does not need to prove itself because it has been there for generations. His family had been in New England since before the Revolutionary War. His father, Graham, ran a hedge fund. His mother, Cordelia, was a former attorney who now spent her time on charity boards and country club committees. The wedding was beautiful, held at a 5-star hotel with 300 guests. Cordelia insisted on the venue, the flowers, the menu. I offered to pay for half, even though a part of me felt out of place among all those people with their inherited wealth and private school connections. But I wanted Brooke to have everything. I always did. After the wedding, things started to change, slowly at first. Brooke called less often. When she did call, she seemed distracted. She always had somewhere else to be, something else to do. I told myself it was normal. She was a newlywed. She had a demanding career. She did not have time for long phone calls with her mother. But there were other things. Small things I tried to ignore. The way she would change the subject when I talked about my childhood, the way she suggested I might want to update my wardrobe before meeting Spencer's family, the way she asked me gently not to mention that her grandfather was a plumber when we had dinner with Cordelia and Graham. I noticed, but I did not say anything. I loved my daughter. I trusted her. I believed that no matter what, we would always be close. After all, I had given her everything. My time, my money, my heart. I had no idea how wrong I was. The day everything changed started like any other Friday. I had a meeting with my accountant in the morning, reviewing the quarterly reports from the properties I still owned. By 2 in the afternoon, we were finished. I had been planning to stay in the city until evening, but I found myself wanting to go home early. Brooke was staying at the house with her 2 children, Theo and Rosie, for the weekend. Spencer was traveling for business. I thought it would be nice to surprise them. I stopped at a bakery on the way and picked up chocolate croissants, Theo's favorite. I bought a bouquet of sunflowers because they always made the kitchen look cheerful. I was humming to myself as I drove down the familiar roads toward home, imagining the look on their faces when I walked through the door. I parked in the garage and decided to go in through the back entrance. The sunroom doors were always unlocked during the day. I would slip in quietly, set up the croissants on the kitchen counter, and then call out for them. A little surprise, a little moment of joy. As I walked across the garden toward the sunroom, I heard Brooke's voice through the partially open window. She was on the phone, pacing back and forth inside. I was about to knock on the glass when her words stopped me cold. "You do not understand how embarrassing it is," she was saying. Her voice was sharp, frustrated. "Every time we have dinner with Spencer's parents, I have to watch what my mother says. She does not know how to act around people like them. She talks about her father fixing toilets like it is something to be proud of." I stood frozen, my hand still raised to knock. "Cordelia is right," Brooke continued. "My mother has money, but she does not have class. You cannot buy breeding. You cannot buy the right kind of background. And every time she opens her mouth, I have to pretend I am not dying inside." The sunflowers felt heavy in my hand. The chocolate croissants suddenly seemed ridiculous. Honestly, it would be better if my mother just disappeared. I know that sounds terrible, but I mean it. My life would be so much easier if I did not have to keep explaining her to everyone. If I did not have to keep apologizing for where I come from. I do not know how long I stood there. Seconds. Minutes. It could have been an hour. The words kept echoing in my head, playing on a loop that I could not stop. Better if my mother just disappeared. I am ashamed of her. I stepped back slowly, silently. I picked up the bakery bag and the flowers that I had dropped without realizing it. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped them again. I walked around to the front of the house. I rang the doorbell like I had just arrived, like I had not heard anything, like my world had not just collapsed in on itself. Brooke opened the door with a bright smile. "Mom, you are early. What a nice surprise." She hugged me. I hugged her back. I smiled. I said I wanted to spend more time with my grandchildren. I handed her the croissants and the flowers. She exclaimed over them like they were the most wonderful gifts she had ever received. Theo and Rosie came running. They wrapped their arms around my legs and shouted, "Grandma, Grandma!" And I knelt down and held them and tried not to let them see that something inside me had shattered. Dinner that night was torture. Brooke chatted about her cases at work, about Spencer's business trip, about the new preschool they were considering for Rosie. I nodded and smiled and said all the right things. I complimented the pasta she made. I read bedtime stories to the children. I kissed them good night and told them I loved them. After everyone went to sleep, I sat alone in the library. The room Walter and I had designed together with the oak shelves and the leather chairs and the fireplace we had found at an estate sale in Vermont. I sat in the dark and let the tears come. I did not cry because I was angry. I cried because I finally understood something I had refused to see for years. My daughter was ashamed of me, not because I had done anything wrong, not because I had failed her in some way, but because of who I was, where I came from. The calluses on my father's hands and the ache in my mother's feet. I had spent my whole life believing that hard work could overcome anything, that if you built something from nothing, people would respect you for it, that my daughter would be proud of the journey, not embarrassed by the starting point. I was wrong. That night I did not sleep at all. I sat in that library until the sun came up, watching the shadows shift across the walls. By morning, something in me had changed. I was not sure what yet, but I knew that things could not stay the same. The days after that night were strange. I moved through them like a ghost, going through the motions, while my mind worked through everything I had heard. Brooke and the children left on Sunday afternoon, and I stood on the porch waving goodbye with a smile plastered on my face. The moment their car disappeared around the bend, the smile fell away. I started remembering things, small moments I had dismissed or explained away over the years. They came back to me now with painful clarity. There was the time Brooke got promoted to senior associate at her firm. She threw a celebration dinner at a restaurant in Manhattan, invited all her colleagues and their spouses. She did not invite me. When I found out about it later, she said it was just a work thing, nothing I would have enjoyed. I believed her then. Now I understood. There was the way she always seemed nervous when I talked to Spencer's parents. The little touches on my arm that I thought were affectionate but now realized were warnings. The way she would jump in to finish my sentences or steer the conversation in a different direction whenever I started telling stories about my past. There was the Christmas 2 years ago when Cordelia asked me about my education. When I mentioned the community college where I took my first business classes, Brooke changed the subject so fast it gave me whiplash. She started talking about a trip to Europe, anything, to move away from the topic of my humble beginnings. I had seen all of it. I just had not wanted to understand what it meant. 2 weeks after I heard that phone call, Cordelia invited me to tea at her private club in Hartford. I almost declined, but something made me accept. Maybe I needed to see with my own eyes what I was dealing with. Maybe I needed confirmation that I was not imagining things. The club was exactly what you would expect. Dark wood paneling oil paintings of someone's ancestors, waiters in white gloves. Cordelia was already seated when I arrived, wearing pearls and a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. We made small talk for a while. She asked about my health, my properties, my plans for the holidays. Then she leaned forward slightly, like she was sharing a secret. "Ethel, I have been meaning to ask you something," she said. "Have you ever considered stepping back a bit? You have worked so hard your whole life. Maybe it is time to let the younger generation take the lead." I asked her what she meant. "Well," she continued, "Spencer and Brooke have their own circle now, their own life. I just think it might be easier for everyone if you were not quite so present. You know how demanding your daughter's career is. And raising 2 children in this social environment requires a certain delicacy. She paused, stirring her tea. That big house of yours must be so much work to maintain. Have you thought about something smaller? A nice condominium somewhere quiet. You could relax, enjoy your retirement. Let Brooke and Spencer build their own legacy without feeling like they have to look backward. I sat there and listened to this woman tell me in the politest possible terms that I was an embarrassment who should quietly disappear from my own daughter's life. Every word was carefully chosen, every implication clear. I was not good enough for their world. I never would be. The kindest thing I could do was fade into the background and stop causing problems. "Thank you for the suggestion, Cordelia," I said. "I will certainly think about it." I finished my tea, made pleasant conversation, and left the club with my dignity intact. But inside, I was burning. Not with anger at Cordelia. She was exactly what I expected her to be. I was burning with the knowledge that Brooke had let this happen, had participated in it, had probably even encouraged it. When I got home, I went straight to the drawer where I kept the old phones. Brooke had left her previous iPhone at the house months ago when she upgraded. She had asked me to throw it away, but I had forgotten. Now I charged it up and started scrolling through the old messages. What I found there broke my heart all over again. There were texts between Brooke and Spencer going back 3 years. Conversations about me that they never intended me to see. Brooke had written, "Dinner with my mom tonight. Pray for me. You know how she gets when she starts talking about her bootstrap story." Spencer replied, "Your mom means well. She just does not understand that money is not the same as breeding. Not her fault she was not raised properly." Another exchange from the week of Brooke's birthday. "Mom wants to come to the party at the club. How do I tell her it is not her scene without hurting her feelings?" Spencer, "Just say it is a work event. She will not know the difference. Better to keep her away from my parents anyway. You know how my mother gets." And then the worst one. From just a few months ago. "Sometimes I wish I had been born into a different family. One that did not make me feel like I have to apologize for existing every time we see your parents." Spencer, "I know, babe, but you made it out. You are one of us now. Just keep your mom at arm's length and everything will be fine." I put the phone down. My hands were trembling. 3 years. 3 years of messages like this hidden behind smiles and hugs and "I love you, Mom." I walked through the house that night, looking at everything with new eyes. The marble fireplace, the oak library, the sunroom where Walter took his last breath. I had built all of this. Every penny came from my work, my sacrifice, my determination, and my daughter was ashamed of it, ashamed of me. For the first time in my life, I understood that loving someone does not mean they love you back the same way. And I understood that I had a choice to make. I did not make the decision overnight. I spent a week thinking, planning, working through every angle. This was how I had built my business. Careful analysis, clear thinking, no emotion clouding the judgment. But this was not a business decision. This was about my life, my daughter, my future. In the end, the decision was simple. Brooke wanted me to disappear. She had said it herself. My existence was an inconvenience, an embarrassment, a problem to be managed. Well, I could do something about that. I called Douglas, my attorney, on a Monday morning. He had been Walter's lawyer first, then mine. I trusted him completely. "I want to sell the house," I told him, "as quickly as possible. Cash buyer preferred. I do not care if we have to drop the price." Douglas was quiet for a moment. "Ethel, that house is worth over $5 million. Are you sure about this?" "I have never been more sure of anything." He arranged for an appraisal. The house came back at $5,200,000. I agreed to sell for an even $5 million to a buyer who could close in 3 weeks. a young family with 3 children moving from California. They fell in love with the sunroom and the garden. I was glad the house would be full of laughter again. During those 3 weeks I prepared, I called Margaret my oldest friend and told her everything. She was furious on my behalf, but she understood my decision. She was the only person I trusted with my plan. I met with Douglas again and rewrote my will. My grandchildren Theo and Rosie would each receive a trust fund accessible when they turned 25. The trusts were structured so that Brooke could not touch the money. Everything else would go to educational charities. Brooke herself would receive exactly $1. The will included a letter explaining why to be delivered only after my death. I spent hours going through the house deciding what to keep. In the end, I only took the essentials: photographs of Walter, my journals from the years of building the business, a few pieces of jewelry my mother had left me. The rest I arranged to be sold at a charity auction. The day I signed the closing documents, I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe years. I drove through the gates one last time, watching the house grow smaller in my rearview mirror. No tears, no regrets, just relief. Before I left town, I wrote a letter to Brooke, short and direct. You said it would be better if I disappeared. I heard you that day in the sunroom. I heard everything. I am not angry. I am just finally seeing clearly. The house is sold. Do not look for me. I need to live for myself now. I love you, but I also love myself. And it is time I started acting like it. I gave the letter to Douglas with instructions to deliver it 3 days after I left. By then, I would be long gone. I got in my car and started driving north. I had no specific destination, no plan beyond getting away. I drove through Massachusetts, watching the leaves turn colors on either side of the highway. I kept going until I reached Vermont, until the roads got smaller and the towns got quieter, and the silence felt like a blanket instead of an emptiness. I stopped in a town I had never heard of. Population 2,000-something, a main street with a hardware store, a bakery, a library. Mountains in the distance already dusted with early snow. There was a small inn on the edge of town run by a woman named Helen. She was about my age, a widow like me, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense way of speaking. I asked if she had a room available for a few nights. How many nights? She asked. I am not sure yet, I said. Maybe a week, maybe longer. She looked at me for a long moment, and I wondered what she saw. A tired woman in expensive clothes driving a car that did not belong on these back roads, with sadness written all over her face. Stay as long as you need, she said. We do not rush anybody here. That first night, I sat by the window of my small room and watched the stars come out. More stars than I had seen in decades. The city lights and the suburban glow had hidden them from me for so long. But here they were, waiting. Patient. I thought about Brooke, about the phone call and the text, and all the ways she had pushed me away while pretending to pull me close. I thought about the house I had sold, the life I had walked away from, and for the first time since that October afternoon, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I was free. The letter reached Brooke on a Thursday. Douglas called to confirm delivery, and I thanked him and asked him not to give anyone my new phone number. He agreed. I imagine the scene often. Brooke opening the envelope, probably expecting something routine. Reading my words once, twice a dozen times. Trying to understand. Then the panic setting in. According to what Margaret told me later, Brooke tried calling my old number within minutes. Disconnected. She drove to the house the next morning and found a moving truck in the driveway, and a family she did not recognize carrying boxes inside. She called Douglas and demanded to know where I was. He told her politely but firmly that he was not authorized to share that information. She threatened legal action. He reminded her that I was a competent adult with every right to sell my property and relocate without her permission. Spencer got involved next. He called Douglas with that superior tone he uses when he thinks money and pedigree should open every door. Douglas was unmoved. "My client's wishes are clear," he said. "She does not want to be found." Brooke posted on social media a long, heartfelt message about her missing mother. She used words like worried and confused and please help us find her. The comments were full of sympathy. No one knew the truth. I watched from a distance through Margaret's updates. I felt nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, no urge to reach out. Just a strange, hollow peace. Meanwhile, I was building a new life. After a week at Helen's Inn, I rented a small cottage on the outskirts of town. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a window overlooking a meadow, a porch where I could sit and watch the sun go down. The rent was $800 a month. After decades of maintaining a $5 million estate, it felt almost absurd. I started filling my days with things I had always wanted to do, but never had time for. I joined a watercolor class at the community center, run by a retired art teacher named Frances. My first attempts were terrible, but Frances just laughed and told me that terrible was the first step to tolerable, and tolerable was the first step to good. I volunteered at the local library, helping elementary school kids with their reading. There was something healing about sitting with a 7-year-old sounding out words together, watching their face light up when they finally got it right. These children did not care about my net worth or my family background. They just wanted someone to pay attention to them. Helen became a friend. We had tea together every morning, sitting in her kitchen while she told me stories about the town and its people. She had lost her husband 12 years ago and had rebuilt her life, one day at a time. She understood without me having to explain. I met others too. Thomas, a widower who made furniture in his garage and sold it at the farmer's market. Gladys, who taught piano and made the best apple pie in 3 counties. They accepted me without questions, without judgment. They did not know about the $5 million house or the daughter who was ashamed of me. They only knew the woman who showed up for watercolor class and helped at the library. For the first time in years, I felt like myself. Not Ethel the businesswoman, not Ethel the mother, not Ethel the embarrassment, just Ethel. Brooke eventually found Margaret. She called crying, begging for information. Margaret was cooler than I would have expected. "Do you know why your mother left?" Margaret asked. "She said she heard something," Brooke replied. "But I do not understand. What did she hear?" "She heard you tell someone that you wished she would disappear, that you were ashamed of her." Silence on the other end. "She also found the text messages," Margaret continued. 3 years of you complaining about her to Spencer, 3 years of pretending to love her while wishing she would stay out of your life." Brooke started to cry harder. She said it was not like that. She said she did not mean it. She said she was stressed, she was under pressure. Spencer's family expected certain things. Margaret cut her off. "Your mother gave you everything. Everything. And you repaid her by being embarrassed that she did not grow up rich enough for your new friends. That is not stress, Brooke. That is cruelty." Brooke asked to speak to me. Margaret said no. "Your mother needs time," she said. "A lot of time. Maybe forever. If you want any chance of fixing this, you need to take a hard look at who you have become. Because the woman I know would never have raised a daughter like the one you have turned into." Margaret hung up. When she told me about the call, I felt a flicker of something, sadness maybe, or hope. I was not sure. But I was not ready to act on it. I was not ready to let Brooke back in, not yet. I kept painting. I kept volunteering. I kept having tea with Helen and buying bread from the bakery and walking through the woods when the leaves were at their most brilliant. I let myself heal. A year passed. 12 months of quiet mornings and simple pleasures and learning to be happy alone. I bought the cottage instead of renting it. I used a small fraction of the money from the house sale. The rest went into investments, into the trusts for my grandchildren, into donations to causes I believed in. I started writing a book, a memoir of sorts about growing up poor and building something from nothing, about love and loss and the unexpected betrayals that change who we are. I called it Enough, because that was what I had finally learned to believe about myself. I was enough. I had always been enough. The problem was never me, it was the people who could not see my value. A small publisher in Vermont expressed interest in the manuscript. We met at a coffee shop in Montpelier, and by the end of the conversation, we had a deal. Nothing huge, but it felt like a victory. Margaret visited every month. She would drive up from Connecticut with bags of groceries I did not need, and news I was not sure I wanted to hear. Brooke had left Spencer, she told me. The marriage had collapsed under the weight of all those lies and pretensions. Brooke was in therapy now, trying to understand how she had become someone she did not recognize. I listened, but did not respond. I was not ready. Then one autumn afternoon, Brooke appeared at my door. I do not know how she found me. Hired a detective probably, or maybe Margaret finally cracked. It did not matter. There she was standing on my porch with red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands. "Mom," she said, "please, can we talk?" I let her in. What else could I do? She was still my daughter. We sat in my small living room surrounded by my watercolors on the walls and Helen's handmade throw blankets on the couch. Brooke looked around like she was seeing a foreign country. "This is where you live now?" she asked. "This is home," I said. She started talking, apologizing, explaining. The words tumbled out in a rush like she had been holding them in for months. She said Spencer's family had made her feel inadequate from the beginning. She said she had tried so hard to fit in that she lost herself. She said she never really meant those things. She was just venting, just coping. I let her finish. Then I asked her one question. "When you said you wished I would disappear, did it feel good?" She flinched like I had slapped her. "Mom, did it feel good to distance yourself from me, to tell Spencer I was not good enough, to nod along when Cordelia talked about breeding and class?" She started crying. "I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I have spent the last year realizing how wrong I was. I lost Spencer. I almost lost myself. Please, I need you to forgive me." I took a breath. "I do forgive you, Brooke. I forgave you a long time ago. Holding on to anger would only poison me, and I have worked too hard to build this peace." Her face lit up with hope. "But," I continued, "forgiving you does not mean going back to the way things were. I am not moving back to Connecticut. I am not going to pretend that everything is fine so you can feel better about yourself. If you want me in your life, you have to accept me as I am. All of me. The plumber's daughter. The woman who worked 3 jobs to get through college. The person you were ashamed of." She wiped her tears. "I do accept you. I swear I do." "Then prove it," I said. "Not with words, with time, with actions. Show me that you have changed. Show me that you can love me without needing me to be something I am not." She nodded. She promised. She hugged me and I hugged her back. But when she drove away that afternoon, I did not feel the way I expected to feel. Not relief, not joy, not sadness. Just calm. Whatever happened next was not up to me anymore. I had done my part. I had set my boundaries. The rest was up to Brooke. I watched her car disappear down the road, and then I went back inside to finish my painting. 2 more years have passed since that day. I am 63 now, and I have never been happier. The book was published last spring. It did not become a bestseller, but it found its readers. Women who had been through similar things wrote to me from all over the country. They told me my story gave them courage, That validation was worth more than any spot on a list. I still live in Vermont in my little cottage with the meadow view. Helen passed away last winter peacefully in her sleep. I was with her at the end, holding her hand the way I had held Walter's years ago. She left me her recipe for chocolate chip cookies and a note that said, "Keep painting." I have. Brooke calls me every week now. Not rushed, not distracted. Real conversations about her work, her children, her life. She started her own law firm last year, finally free from the pressure of impressing the old money crowd. She sounds different, lighter, more like the girl I raised before Spencer and Cordelia got their hands on her. She brought Theo and Rosie to visit last summer. 2 weeks in Vermont, hiking trails and picking berries and learning to paint with Grandma. Theo asked me once why I do not live in a big house anymore. I told him that big houses are nice, but they cannot hug you back. He thought about that for a minute, then nodded like it made perfect sense. The kids painted me pictures before they left. Theo's showed my cottage with flowers all around it. Rosie's was more abstract, lots of colors and shapes, but she told me it was a picture of love. I hung both paintings on my wall, right next to the photograph of Walter. Brooke and I still have work to do. Trust is not rebuilt in a day or a year or even 2 years. Some days I catch myself wondering if she has truly changed, or if she is just better at hiding. But then she calls to ask my advice about something, or she tells Theo and Rosie a story about their grandmother that makes them proud, and I think maybe we are going to be okay. I do not regret selling the house, not for a second. That house was a beautiful prison, keeping me trapped in a role I had outgrown. The money bought my freedom. The distance gave me clarity, and losing everything I thought mattered helped me find what actually does. Family is not about obligation. It is about choice. I chose to walk away when I needed to. Brooke chose to come back when she was ready, and now we are both choosing to try again on different terms with open eyes. If you are watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, I want you to know something. You are enough, exactly as you are. If someone makes you feel ashamed of your roots, your struggles, your journey, that is their failure, not yours. You do not have to accept it. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to start over. You are allowed to choose yourself. The $5 million house is gone. But I found something worth far more. I found myself. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved to protect your own heart? What did that journey look like for you? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one. If this video touched you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more. And share this video with someone who might need to hear that they are not alone. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for listening. I hope wherever you are, whatever you are going through, you find the courage to be enough for yourself. Take care of your heart. Until next time.